Laura, you've already had great fun discovering all the places you can't say titties, right?
Yes.
Live with Kelly and Mark, apparently,
Right.
and Times Square. Is that a
Times
true
Square.
story?
Oh, that's an absolutely true story. I was told by Kelly Ripa, name drop, that she was going to hold it up on air on my pub day and shout it out.
Amazing.
And then on Sunday, I get a text from my friend who was gifting me this billboard in Times Square with a screenshot of an email she got saying that the Times Square billboard committee will not show the word titties. What do you want me to do?
Welcome to episode 109. I am Jenny, and I help squirrel-brained entrepreneurs thrive in a world of shiny objects. If your to-do list is overwhelming or your I help statement is all over the place and it gets in the way of you doing the thing, then I am so happy that you found your way to this podcast. Today is the second installment in the Meet the Mentor series, and I could not be more excited to introduce you guys to today's guest, Laura Belgray. She's the founder of Talking Shrimp, co-creator of The Copy Cure, and author of a brand new book. I'm going to tell you guys the title of it in just 1 second. We're going to dig into it really, really deeply. She is an award-winning copywriting expert who helps entrepreneurs find the perfect words to express and sell what they do in a way that gets them paid to be themselves. Through her work with hundreds of clients, including online biggies like Marie Forleo and Amy Porterfield, she has seen firsthand that putting you into your copy and all through your business is pure magic for getting people to love you up, share your ideas, and happily click your buy button. This is one of my favorite conversations to date. You guys are going to love it. Let's go. Laura Belgray, what an honor it is to have you on the show today. How are you?
Thank you, Jenny. I'm great. And it's an honor to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, I have way too many questions than we do for the time allotted. So we'll just try to get through as many of them as possible. But I actually wanted to start with a story. So I took myself on Monday out to my favorite little Mexican restaurant for lunch, and I brought your book to finish in preparation for this interview. And I guess they must have sat like all the singles in the restaurant in the same section. And so there was a guy sitting by himself, and it was really awkward the way the tables were set up. Like all he had to do while he ate was stare directly at me. I just felt super conspicuous sitting there, like reading and drinking my margarita. And at the end, he gets up and I'm like, he's going to come over. He's going to come over and say something to me. And he absolutely did. And he like leans over conspiratorially almost. And he says, I don't know what that book is about, but I love the title of it.
Good. Please take it to more restaurants.
Yes, I will. I will. So for those of you listening or maybe viewing this, Laura's new book is called Tough Titties on Living Your Best Life When You're the Effing Worst. And Laura, you've already had great fun discovering all the places you can't say titties, right?
Yes.
Live with Kelly and Mark, apparently,
Right.
and Times Square. Is that a
Times
true
Square.
story?
Oh, that's an absolutely true story. I anticipated that. I didn't think well, I'll backtrack. I was told by Kelly Ripa, name drop, that she was going to hold it up on air on my pub day and shout it out.
Amazing.
And then she told me that on Friday. And then on Sunday, I get a text from my friend who was gifting me this billboard in Times Square that I was really excited about. I had planned on that Friday of my publication week to go with my family. It was going to air on Friday, and I was going to go with my mom, my sister, my nephew, my husband to Times Square. And I figured someone would record me looking up in wonder at my billboard and saying, oh my God, and having a pinch me moment and all this. And then Sunday, and I had a video made for it and paid a decent amount of money too. And then Sunday, we got a text from the friend who was gifting it to me with a screenshot of an email she got saying that the Times Square billboard committee will not show the word titties. What do you want me to do? And it's like, oh, you've got to be kidding me. And so the person who made me the video very kindly, like on the house, made me a new version with it blurred out, titties blurred out, and then one version with asterisks. And they rejected those two. And I was like, all right, forget it. And I was like, there's no way Kelly is going to be able on morning TV to hold up my book. But she found a workaround and put Post-its over the word titties.
And then just said all the words that sound like titties that aren't
Yeah,
actually the word
tatas.
titties.
Mhm.
It was very adorable to watch her kind of like step around that. But
Yes.
that's crazy that in Times Square, of all places, that
Yes, where you can see flesh titties aplenty. They're
absolutely.
painted or with just little pasties over the nips.
Uh-huh.
And you can see the naked cowboys full on package, all outlined by his disgusting tidy whities. You
Yep.
can see it all in Times Square.
Yeah.
And you can
So
get molested by Elmo, but you can't say the word titties.
who are they protecting here?
Right.
I mean, I having lived in New York for a little while, I find that totally crazy myself. So
Yes.
yeah, that's a great story though. And at least Kelly found a workaround and you got your
Yes.
shout out. So
Right.
that was fantastic. Yay. So for those of you listening, the book is a collection of truly laugh out loud personal stories basically about being a messy human, which I think will make the messiest among you feel seen, as I can personally attest to. And Laura, you talk about being a late bloomer, and the book sort of takes us on a journey of you finding your reason for being, your purpose, your ikigai. You actually use that
Yes.
Japanese word at one point. So I'm kind of curious, did you, when you were little, have an idea of what you wanted to be when you grew up?
When I was little, as one does when one is little and has encouraging parents, I just thought I was good at everything. And I was like, I'm the best drawer, so I'm going to be an artist. And then so I'm the best writer, so I'm going to be a writer. I did think I was going to be a writer. And I worked on a novel when I was like 10, 11. That was a shameless ripoff of Tom Sawyer / Huck Finn. I mean, it was just about two boys rolling in the dirt of the town square saying like, don't you talk about my paw. um, so there was no inner critic, obviously, no voice telling me that my stuff was crap. That always comes later, like with adolescence.
Yeah.
And so I didn't really know what I was going to be when I grew up, but I did think I knew it was going to be something creative. And although when I was 6, I was sure I was going to be a cab driver because my mom always said, we can't take a cab, it's too expensive. So I thought, cab drivers make a lot of money. I want to be rich, so I'll be a cab driver.
That's hilarious. Astronaut and president of the United States, and then there's cab driver for
Cab
Laura
driver.
Belgray. That's so great. So it was, but you always kind of knew that something creative was really what would be most fun for you.
Yes. And I always wanted to make a lot of money. From a very young age. I loved money. I loved my allowance. I loved spending money. And so I always wanted to do something creative and make a lot of money doing it.
I love that you talk about that so freely, thereby sort of removing the stigma around saying, I want to make a lot of money, because I feel like a lot of people have that stigma, you know?
They do. They do such acrobatics trying to explain why they want money. You can never say just, I want to be rich, because that's fun, because it's comfortable, because you can make choices freely. They say, oh, yeah, no, I do want to have a lot of money. I want to earn a lot of money, because when you have more money, you have more power to do good in the world and more money to give away to important causes, and et cetera, et cetera. And I always wonder, like, why can't we talk about money the way we talk about spaghetti? Nobody says, oh, I want lots more spaghetti, only because then when you have more spaghetti, you have more spaghetti to give away to people, and you can do so much with the spaghetti. They're just like, yeah, I want more spaghetti. But money, everyone tiptoes around and explains, especially women.
Yeah. And there's so much in this book that you kind of push back against. And so that's one of the things, and we're going to dig into some of the others. Let's talk about the title for a second, and the fact that you say tough titties often.
I do.
It implies that you don't really care what other people think, and you don't should on yourself, like we are all told not to do.
Yeah.
But you have also admitted that you sometimes care more than you wish you did. And so,
Yes.
as an example, I'm on Laura's email list. I read all of your emails obsessively. And the woman who said that you seemed angry in your article, why won't
Mm,
people just let me not be a mom?
yeah.
And so, real quick sidebar, I also elected not to be a mom. I have my own like collection of stories about the weird stuff that people have said to me,
Uh-huh.
but it said so much about her that she felt anger from you in that
Yeah.
piece, because there's not an inkling. There's no chip on
Yeah.
your shoulder at whatsoever. So I was just like, oh, that tells me a lot about her. But I would really like to talk about this idea that we're told to give 110%. At the same time, we're told to give zero fucks.
Yes.
And how have you reconciled that? Because I understand the feeling of wanting to defend yourself and tell that lady that she just didn't get it. As a writer, I wanted to defend you for like, for you.
Yes.
um, but then there is the same Laura Belgray who this is a quote from the book, rejected any work options that felt even an iota less fun than I could do this till I croak.
Yeah.
So to what do you attribute that willingness to push back against expectations?
Yeah. I think mostly is that I cannot get with them. I just can't fulfill them. I can't live up to those expectations. I am honestly not good at doing things I don't want to do. And you might say nobody is, but I'm really not. I think there are a lot of people in my life who are really hard workers and good at just doing what they've got to do to make they're fulfilling their responsibilities, doing what it takes to get what they want. And I have always had this sort of dilemma that I want a lot for myself. I am ambitious. I want success. I want money, as discussed, but there's a lot that I don't want to do to get it. Like that, a lot of what it takes is just not for me, has not been for me. So I push back against things that I don't want to do, including having kids. And I am susceptible to worrying what people think or being stung if they disapprove, not so much if they disapprove, but if they disagree with me or criticize me. I am not insensitive to criticism. It stings me and I have the urge to defend myself. I can be defensive. So I am caught often between giving zero fucks and giving too much of a fuck, more about what people think of me than what I am supposed to be. And so, yeah, that's a dichotomy that I think runs pretty deep in me.
Yeah, I mean the shoulds that you should. I was taught to you put your nose to the grindstone. You
Mm-hmm.
pay your dues. I
Yeah.
was being told that when I was working in restaurants that made me absolutely miserable. And restaurant jobs are a dime a dozen. If you're
Yeah.
miserable, just go get a different one.
Right.
But that's not what I was taught. So it took a lot of unlearning to get to a place. And now I'll hear a strategy, for example, like when before Instagram started sucking,
Yeah.
and it was like 3 reels a day,
Right.
like this is the strat. And I was just like, no, there's no, that's even if I wanted to, that would take up my entire day. There would
Yeah.
be no room left for the stuff I actually do enjoy doing. And it is so nice to have someone like you talk about how you haven't, and you've still managed to make it work, because it does give the rest of us permission to be like, that's not for me. I don't choose that
Yes.
thing. You know?
Right. Yeah. I'm not good at the supposed to's, especially in online business. Well, also, especially in the corporate world, I could not hack it there and I couldn't get in at 10 a.m. I couldn't get in there. Certainly couldn't get there at 9 a.m. And couldn't follow like chain of command. And I've always, when you talk about paying your dues, I've always been a bit of a ducker under. I duck under the ropes. Which is something I'll do at the airport too. It's like, why do you have to walk through this empty maze to get to the ticket agent? Why can't I duck under the ropes? And in corporate life, I was so bad at doing whatever it took to rise up through the ranks at paying the dues. I wasn't meant for an admin job, any low-level job. I just flunked at. So I've always been had to duck under and come in at a higher level, at the creative level that I aspired to. And then in the online world, like all these things that you're supposed to do, like run a live challenge, post three, the live challenge I can't get with a friend of mine. And this is back when they really, really worked. And a friend of mine told me about it. She's like, here's what you do. And you don't do any webinars. You just jump on a live for an hour a day for 5 days in a row. And then you have people DM you. And then you have a bunch of coaches that you hire. And you have those coaches coach them and then go in the DMs. And I was like, I can't handle any of this. Everything you're saying is making me float above my body. And so I did not do it. And sure, maybe, I mean, she was having like $4 million launches. So that sounds pretty nice. But even for that kind of money, if it were guaranteed, maybe I've like sucked it up and done it. But because it's not guaranteed, I was like, I'm not willing to do all that stuff that I hate, that I just hate the sound of, for a possible big payout. I'd rather do the things I'm really good at and comfortable doing for the payout that I know it can make.
I think when you hate the sound of it, it's just staying true to yourself to say, I'm not. But I have, unfortunately, tried to follow other people's prescriptions for success. And it makes me think I've often referred to myself as unemployable.
That's me too.
Even when I worked for my mom, I got fired. So, and it's kind of, to bring it full circle, now that you're your own boss, you said you weren't even a very good boss at first to yourself.
No, terrible. Like, I was the kind of boss who would say, like, can you do this, this, and this? Oh, wait, also do this. And
all at the same time, right?
Wait, what are you doing? Why are you taking a break? Oh, is that called, inspiration, munching kettle corn and watching TV? Like, what are you doing? You're a loser. The stuff you just wrote is crap. I was just that kind of abusive boss to myself, like asking for a million things at once, being totally disorganized and negative about everything I created. So both bad employee and bad boss. I've gotten better as a boss to myself, but still have never wanted to be a boss and wanted to hire a team of people. There's one thing that is drilled into us is, if you want to scale, if you want to make it, you have to hire a team. And I just saw my friend Amy Porterfield talking about this, how like everything changes when you hire a big team. And I'm just like, nope. I have people who I have, like, contractors. My manager, Sandra, is not on the payroll, but I am her client. And I like it that way. Would it be useful to have a whole bunch of people who are doing all the things I don't want to do or just don't have time to do? Yes, but I don't want to be the person keeping the lights on. That sounds dreadful to me.
Yeah. And as someone who is the perpetual bottleneck with the few contractors that I have in my employ, like it's not all it's cracked up to be. Amy Porterfield is a superwoman, obviously, that she can do it. It's not, I agree with you completely. How do you get yourself to write a book then?
Well, it's funny. Someone at my Barnes and Noble event, a former colleague of mine from TV Land, Nick at Night, she raised the question she asked. She raised her hand during the Q&A and said, I'm just wondering where you got the discipline to write this book. And she very much validated everything I'd said in the book and say about myself, which people are like, you're not lazy, you're not this and that. She's like, because you used to stroll in at 11, 12, 1. I was like, rarely 11, but thank you. And we'd all say, well, it must be nice to be Laura Belgray. And so I'm just wondering how you got the discipline to write a book. And I was like, that's a very good question. And thank you for validating that I do indeed stroll to work at 12 or 1. I wanted it badly enough. I had envisioned, like, I think what got me to really buckle down and put my nose to the grindstone, or on this book, was the vision. I had been talking about it for years and years, and I had been working on it a bit here and there. And one day I had this vision of, if a bus were bearing down on me and it was about to be lights out for good, I knew that my last thought before it hit me would be, I didn't write my book. And I've been wanting this from myself for so long. And I know other people have been wanting it from me, which isn't usually a motivator, but I really wanted to make this book a reality. And then I got a book deal. And once I had a book deal and a deadline, and it was a real thing, I was like, I'm not going to skip out on this. Though I did fantasize for a good year about giving back my advance because I was struggling with it so much.
Wow. I relate to that. Like, I don't have regrets in my life, but if I got hit by a bus tomorrow, the fact that my book isn't written yet would be the one regret. Have you ever heard of Gretchen Rubin's The Four Tendencies?
Yeah. Sure.
Are you a rebel?
I'm a rebel and a questioner.
Okay.
I mean,
I'm a questioner, so I relate. Yeah.
Yes, I think I got rebel, and I was like, I'm not sure that's true. And someone actually checked with Gretchen Rubin. She was like, that means she's a rebel and a questioner.
Okay. Yeah. So in other words, because I said so, or this is how it's always been done, does not work for you as a reason.
Oh, no.
To do a thing.
Never, no.
In fact, I will actively not do what you have asked me to do if your reason is because I said so.
Absolutely. I'm going to do the opposite if it's because I said so. If it's because this is what works, then I might do it. I want to do what works. But if it's somebody's rule that I don't agree with, like just because that's the way they want it, or that's the way it's always been done, or that's what everyone agrees is what you're supposed to do, screw that. I'm not doing it.
Yeah. I had a boyfriend in high school say, I don't like facial piercings or tattoos. And I immediately went out and got both of those things. So again, you're giving people permission to like be themselves and push back against these things. And I just absolutely love that. On this exact topic, one of my favorite passages in Tough Titties reads, and still the song, she works hard for the money, always made me sad for her, whoever she was. She works hard for the money, so you better treat her right. Wasn't there a job she could do more easily and still deserve to be treated right? So let me just say here to that. Yes.
Thank you.
But so how did you escape the curse of attaching your self-worth to how much you produce? This is something I'm working through right now and talking about a lot on the show. How come that doesn't affect you?
I don't know. I never really understand why it affects other people so much, why they are so attached to this idea of working hard, and that makes you worthy of a person. As a person, I feel a little bit ashamed when I'm working too hard, maybe because I've branded myself as a lazy person. And I just feel it goes against my values to work too hard. I like easy money. I like easy results. I love going hard at work that feels easy. That's a whole different thing. When you don't even feel the passage of time and you look up and it's dark out because you're so absorbed in what you're doing. Like when I'm writing and it's going like that and I'm in the zone, I love that more than anything. But work that feels so effortful and frustrating and unpleasant, I feel like, yeah, almost ashamed if I'm doing that. And if I'm harried and too busy. I know a lot of people who, because they attach their self-worth to how hard they work, they also attach it to how busy they are and feel uncomfortable if they look at their calendar and it's not full of meetings and tasks.
Yeah.
And I feel the absolute opposite. If I look at the calendar and it's got more than 2 things on it that day, or even more than 1, I'm like, oh no, I have that kind of day. I want to look and see nothing. There's nothing more joyful to me than looking at the calendar and seeing nothing on it.
That equals freedom. I
Yeah.
think. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is the new me, and it's probably influenced in large part by you, has that kind of calendar. I used to have like multiple meetings a day, and that, like, now if that were to occur, I actually had 2 interviews last week and I was like, I hate this day. I hate having
Yeah.
2 podcast interviews in the same day. So yeah, I completely relate. Do you have any advice to give for people that do have those like 2 things so intrinsically tied up to each other, the self-worth and the productivity piece?
Yeah, I would say I mean, I'm imagining that probably comes from your parents or your culture. Your parents saying work harder, or I know that parents are now told to praise kids for how hard they worked. Like, you're not supposed to say, "Oh, you're so smart." You're supposed to say, acknowledge, "Oh, I see you worked really hard on that." And you
Yeah.
get a pat on the back for how hard you work. And so it probably comes from some sort of culture that they're steeped in. And then now you, by extension, are also steeped in. And no one's really, I don't think anyone's that impressed. No one's watching to see how hard you work, unless you are at a job where you're looking to be promoted and someone is looking at how hard you work and how eager you are to do all the thing, whatever they throw at you. That's a different story. But your self-worth still is not tied into that. You're still worthy as a person, and just as admirable in my eyes, if you care what I think, if you do things easily and are rewarded for that. I think that's great.
I love that there's a lot more talk these days about working smarter, not harder, because it feels like there is a little bit of a shift away from like the Gary V style. Although there will always be the Gary V fanatics
Yeah.
who, I mean, he brags, I don't have time for life or to
Yeah.
socialize with people in my world. And yet I come across his content without that context necessarily, and think that, like, repurposing one thing into 72 other things so I can put it in all of the places is just like how you have to be successful. And I don't realize that he has willingly sacrificed having any semblance of a life
Yeah.
in order to do that.
That's
Yeah,
not
but
fun.
I think it's the American dream. I just wrote an episode about this, so it's high forefront of the mind. The American dream essentially says the only thing standing between you and upward mobility is laziness. Just work harder and you'll get it.
Yes.
So
Right.
it starts there. It's definitely a cultural thing, and then maybe from our parents as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. And then there's the opposite thing, which is also, I find magical thinking of like, just be in alignment with your desires, and everything you want will flow into your vortex or whatever it is. And you will call in everything that you desire. And I don't think that that's necessarily true either. I think I think there is work to be done. Like, if you have dreams, especially creative ones, you have to create. You've got to put in the time and put yourself into it. That doesn't mean it has to be terrible and hard and that you have to be busy all day long. And if you're not, then you're not going to succeed. I think there's no one has magically captured what it takes, what it truly takes to succeed in any way that speaks to me yet.
Mhm. Yeah. But I hear what you're saying. It is hard work, especially to write a book. I'm in the middle of doing it. You've
Mm.
just done it. It's a
Yep.
lot of work,
Yeah.
but it is aligned action because it's the stuff that we're obsessed with, right? And you say that
Mhm.
you can get yourself to do work if you're obsessed with it. Like you were just
Yes.
describing, night has fallen and you've just been in the flow and you've lost time, right? So
Yeah.
maybe that's the difference. Is if the work, you love it so much you forget to eat and pee,
Yes.
that's then you're doing the right thing. All
Yeah.
else can just fall away, as far as I'm concerned, as far as
Right.
you're concerned. I think that's kind
Right. That is
of,
where the magic is. And everyone says the magic is outside your comfort zone. I disagree. I mean, I do think sometimes we have to step outside our comfort zone. So we can't always stay in it. There are things that we have to do that don't feel comfortable or that feel very uncomfortable. But for me, the real magic is what happens inside my comfort zone when I'm doing what is comfortable for me to do, what I feel I have a facility for, and it feels like I am rocking this. That's where the magic happens.
yeah. Yeah, I agree completely. And that's really, that's the only work I want to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, agreed. So you say that you don't wake up in the morning, and we touched on this a little bit earlier, thinking, how can I change the world today? And I think as creators, we sometimes wrestle with the notion that we're supposed to. That's probably why the whole I want money just to because I want it,
Yeah.
and no one's really willing to say that. I think that might be where that comes from. But you do give thought when you sit down to write to how you can make a person laugh, think differently, get inspired, write better, or feel less alone. And that last one, especially, is a worthy cause if I've ever heard one. So, Elizabeth Gilbert talked about when she did book signings for Eat, Pray, Love, how frequently people came up to her and said, often angrily, "You wrote my story." They were like mad at her about it. And I actually did go to Italy for 3 months after a devastating breakup. So I had a little snippet of that, but I never identified with that story in the way I identified with Tough Titties. Like, you wrote my story. At the same time, of course you didn't. It's your story. It took place on the opposite side of the country with characters that I don't know. And that is the power of writing with specific detail, like TMI sometimes even.
Yeah.
And this is what you teach. Like, can you speak to why details that in reality make your story unlike anyone else's story, copycat proof, as you say, can still make something feel so relatable that a person would say to you, "You wrote my story"? How does that work?
Yeah, that is about detail. To me, that's like the magic of writing well is in concrete original detail. Naming the supermarket instead of just saying the supermarket. Naming the bar that you went to and just saying the bar. The commercial, the exact doll that you begged for as a kid, instead of saying I begged for a doll that could, you know, eat and drink and pee and poop. I would say I begged for Baby Alive, and I described the commercial and what the baby could do, what Baby Alive could do, which was all four of those things. And I think that those details keep it from being vague and like everybody else's story. They are what give it texture. That make it unlike anybody else. Otherwise, it's just a blank box. Say you're building a house and you just paint it white and make it exactly like the next house. Then it's it's unrelatable. Your story is unrelatable if it's just a blank box and just saying the same things that everybody else is saying, and we can't even get through it because there's nothing to those details. That texture gives it a sort of grip. It gives us handholds, footholds to grab onto. And I don't know why that is true. I've heard that. I don't know who said it first, that the more specific your story, the more universal. But I have found it to be true. And it's true when I read somebody else's work. And I also feel that, like, damn it, I have real detail and vein. Like, that is so perfectly described. And even though that's not the same brand that I would reference, it's like just so dead on. You just know that's what makes you that's what allows us to relate. So I don't know why that works so well, but I am a fanatic for it, for including those original details that paint a picture, that put us in a time and place and make us feel like that is my story exactly somehow, even though it's absolutely not my
Yeah.
story.
Yeah, it's something with brain science, how we find the one detail and we suddenly are in the story completely, and now it's ours, even though it's somebody else's, but that's what makes it memorable and sticky.
Yeah.
It makes me think, when you were talking about going through one of your many obsessions was dieting and food and over focusing on what you ate. I used to eat wasa
Yeah.
and hard-boiled eggs. That was my lunch in 5th grade because I
Oh,
was going to the diet center with my mom. What even is that substance? Why is it still sold and it hasn't all been shot into space?
right. I think I say in the book, it's basically cardboard sold in the cracker aisle. And
that is
God knows
exactly
why.
what it is.
And you
Yeah.
have to put butter on it to make it swallowable.
It's dry as the desert. It's the
Yeah.
funniest stuff. They love it, I think, in Sweden. There's multiple different kinds over there. So there are some cultures that enjoy this particular food item, but I can't get behind it at all.
No, no. But obviously, we do have the same story if you were in 5th grade going to the diet center.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's so many of those. I mean, I have my own chapter 9. You guys will have to read it to know what I'm referencing,
Yeah.
but yeah, absolutely. And that detail, I mean, I love that is really what you teach in your newsletter. But it was the last chapter. I was like, was it yesterday on Story Goldmine? I've been so immersed in your world, I can't remember where I heard these
Love that.
things. But where you were talking about how you got people to sign up for your email list because of your lead magnet called The 5 Secrets to Non-Sucky Copy, and then proceeded to send emails that had nothing to do with that.
Mhm.
That basically are just you telling your stories, which is
Yeah.
essentially kind of what Tough Titties is as well. And yet people stayed.
Yeah. Yet they stayed. And maybe they were just not savvy enough about what copy is to know, but they would say, I love your copy. Like they would read a story about, I don't know, me loving a Menudo video on Saturday mornings. And they would say, I love your copy. Can you help me with mine? So I think maybe I played a mind trick on them, making them think that was just copywriting. I wasn't asking anyone to take an action. Technically, it wasn't really copywriting, but I think they felt connected with me. This is the magic of writing, is that for your business, even if it doesn't have to do with your business directly, is that people connect with you through that writing, feel like they know you, they know, like, and trust you, and then they want to work with you. And that is my hope for the book, even though it's not the kind of book I am supposed to write in this industry. I'm supposed to write an expert book, an instructional, prescriptive book with your next steps at the end of each chapter, or a journal prompt, whatever. And mine is nothing like that. Yet I think that it will lead people back to my business. They will come find me because they feel connected with me. Maybe they want a little taste of what I do. The final chapter, which is called Company Woman, talks about my adventures in the online space and how I finally made it and made a career out of it, and have done very well. So I think that will intrigue them and want to see what that's all about. And it will lead them over to talkingshrimp.com.
So, and that is how you got copywriting clients in the beginning. You're not taking them
Yeah.
anymore, but
Right.
It was your newsletter that led to that.
Yeah, it was my blog, but at the time, like, newsletter wasn't as big a thing. I would write emails that sent people to my blog post, and the blog posts were just fun stories that I always wanted to tell, and people would hire me based on them. Like, oh, I love your copy, or they would love my website and say, I need your copy help. And that is how I got one-on-one clients.
Now, there's some story about your rate eventually got pretty extravagant, right?
Yes.
And like I said, you're not taking clients anymore, but how you don't have fear around pricing your services. So how'd you get to that point? What was it? 15,000?
Oh, no. Well, 16,000 for Shrimp Club, which is my mastermind.
Okay.
But no, it was 1450 for an hour.
Okay.
So $1,450,
Got it.
$1,450 for an hour, a one-on-one with me. And that where we worked in real time in a Google Doc. And I got there, like, when I first started charging for services in the online space for private clients, kind of did it based on what I was making in TV for a day. So I would base it on a day rate, usually $1,000 for a day or $2,000 for a day, depending. And then I started going to hourly because it worked better for me, and I didn't want homework. I didn't want to have to deliver deliverables. And so I think I started with $250 an hour, then $350 an hour, then $500 an hour. That went up to $750. And then that went up to $950. It was like every year or so I would raise my rates. And when I was at $950 an hour, I wrote a piece for Business Insider, saying, I make $950 an hour writing from my couch. Here are my best tips if you want to work from home. And that went semi-viral. It got shared a lot, brought in a lot of subscribers, and I think made people all the more curious about, or I would say eager to hire me, because instead of saying, well, who can afford that? A lot of them would say, well, it must be worth it, because there's a lot of social proof in charging a high price. People, they invest more value in it emotionally. Like, well, I'm hiring the best. I'm paying $950 an hour for this person, so it must be worth it. And then they value their copy that they get out of it even more. Like, this was written by the best or co-written by the best. And then I got tired of clients. I got tired of having private clients, seeing them on my calendar, as we've discussed. And I raised my rates one last time to $1,450, thinking that will keep away clients. Nobody's going to hire me for that.
Right.
And yet they did. They continued to. And that's when I just retired the service altogether.
And so when you say no homework life, you mean outstanding deliverables. You want to work one-on-one. This is our hour. After we're done, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I hate owing work. I hate making good on having already been paid. In the TV world, we learned about that there was a phrase called make goods, and it was what the network owed the client, the advertising client, the advertiser, if they fell short of their, I think, of the ratings they promised. And so it's like, oh, we owe them a spot we owe them a free spot, this month. And it was called make goods. And the phrase make goods, I found traumatizing. And I would think of make good anytime someone had already paid me and now I had to deliver the goods.
Yeah. It feels like free efforting. And
Yeah.
I've always just loved that term, no homework life. Like, we could all get to that point. That would be so incredible. So this has been amazing. Before we get to where my audience can find out more about you, I ask this sometimes of guests, and I feel like from you, I'm gonna really enjoy the response. If you had one piece of advice that, now that you are the Laura Belgray that you are, that you could give to your younger self, what do you think that would be?
I honestly would not give my younger self advice, because my younger self wouldn't take it. So I would
Your
say,
younger self would put her fingers in her ears and say,
yes,
no, I can't hear
yes.
you.
And I think I needed to make all the mistakes I made to be who I am now. And so if I were to tell my younger self, it's all going to work out, eventually you're going to write a book, you're going to have your first $1 million year in your at age 50, and then you're going to write a book and it's going to go great. And it's going to be called Tough Titties. I probably would have sat back and relaxed and then, like, okay, well, it's all going to happen. I don't have to do anything. I think that's what we want when we hire a psychic. For someone to tell us, like, this is going to happen for you. And then you're like, oh, good, I can coast. I'll just know it's going to happen. And so I would not do that to younger me, because I think younger me would just coast and chill.
Yeah. Yeah. Employ that magical thinking that we were talking about, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Right. I knew I would get an answer unlike any answer I've ever gotten. So I really love that. I think it's great, because you just know yourself well enough, and you needed to know, no, you needed to not know. It was still going to involve some work, but it was going to be the work that you're obsessed with.
Yes.
So it's okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, so good. So please tell my listeners how they can come find you and read these magical emails that I'm talking about.
Oh, yes. Please come find me at talkingshrimp.com. And there are many ways to sign up. If you want, I've got freebies all over there. There's my guide to subject lines that don't suck. And that's right there on the homepage. And or at talkingshrimp.com/subject lines. There's a copy guide there, 5 secrets to non-sucky copy. And then you've got to get Tough Titties. That is also at talkingshrimp.com/book, or you can go right to toughtittiesbook.com if you want to go right there and grab yourself a copy, because that's my top recommendation.
Yeah. And careful reading it while drinking a beverage or in public if you find yourself embarrassed when you snort laugh in front of strangers. Truly, I finished it this morning, and it's because I don't like finishing things that I love. Like I have not yet watched the series finale of Walking Dead because it's one of my favorite shows ever. It took me like
saving that a long time.
I have. It took me 10 years to watch the final Harry Potter movie. And I begrudgingly read the last chapter today because I knew that we were talking this afternoon. It is that good. So those of you listening, go check it out immediately. I'll drop all of your links, Laura, in the show notes, including to like your Instagram and stuff, so they can see the famous video that didn't make it up to Times Square. But this has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for your time. I enjoyed this so much.
Me too, Jenny. Thank you.
Absolutely. I'll talk to you soon. So guys, I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. And I hope that it gives you permission to push back against societal shoulds. Tell the world, tough titties, I'm going to do it my way. If something sounds awful to you, Laura has basically given you permission by giving herself permission. Don't do it. Don't do anything that you think sounds awful ever again. And until next time, remember, to be yourself in a world that is constantly trying to make you someone else is the greatest gift you can give yourself. Now get on out there and do the thing.